Welcome to Reshair on ESPN 730. For the next hour, your host, Chris Reshaar, will bring fresh air to your financial needs. Excite, educate, and empower you to make sound financial decisions. Chris is a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with NFM Lending. Originator license number 117266. Now, here's your host, Chris Reshaar.
Good morning, Charlotte. Chris Reshaar here with NFM Lending, back again for another show of Reshair Radio. If you've never listened to Reshair Radio before, we are on every Sunday here on ESPN The Game 730. And we really like to talk about financial needs, things that you have related to mortgage, related to real estate, homeowners insurance, financial planning needs, all kinds of things. And what we do each week is I bring on area experts, whether they are contributors to our show on a regular basis, we call them expert contributors, and or special guests that come in that talk about hot topics. A lot of it's related to real estate because I am in the mortgage business. And by the way, if you need a mortgage, don't forget to give me a call. But nonetheless, I'm excited about our show again this week. And this week we've got two special guests and an expert contributor on. So at the end of our show, the very fourth segment, we'll have Adam Kunda with National Credit Care talking about credit tips and all kinds of credit needs. But let's go ahead and introduce first our two special guests. We've got Lloyd Odell with Odell Realty Group and Susan Dewar with NFM Lending. Welcome this morning.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks Y'all for excited us. To be here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, totally.
So isn't it a lovely looking at the beautiful city here from the ESPN studio?
Love the skyline.
That's right.
Awesome. Best in the country.
I think it's definitely one of the best. I think there's some really nice ones. San Diego's pretty nice. It's hard to beat San Diego.
Yeah.
There's a few others that are great too.
Right. But every time I talk to somebody, they love this skyline.
It is.
It's
awesome.
pretty sharp. Getting better all the time.
So excited to have you both on the show. I've known both of you for a very long time, and as our listeners, we've got kind of some really interesting things that we're going to be talking about related to real estate and maybe how to position offers and all kinds of stuff that Lloyd is going to bring to the table today. But before we really go into what we've prepared for our listeners, I'd like to do is just kind of do an introduction to you, Lloyd, and then reintroduce you, Susan. Susan has been a guest on the show before, and Susan works on my team over at NFM Lending. But Lloyd, I know you've got 20 plus years of experience in real estate. That's pretty awesome. And you do business in North and South Carolina.
Correct.
Which is pretty awesome. And you work with your lovely wife, Karen.
I do, and she is lovely.
And I heard that she maybe does most of the work. Is that right?
You know what? That's what everybody says.
She's not here in the studio, Karen. I'm giving you props, and you don't even know it. But
that's very common.
She's out working right now.
She is actually working
now while we're playing in the studio.
Right.
Okay, got it. Having fun here. So Lloyd, what I'd like to do is just kind of maybe have you tell our listeners, how did you get started in the real estate business?
You know, it's funny you should ask that. It was really a culmination of just a lifelong, being around realtors growing up, and my dad being a custom home builder. Had never really thought about, like most realtors do today, hey, I'm going to grow up one day. I want to be a realtor. But being in the building business for quite some time. Just went to a birthday party one time, and there was a realtor there. My wife and I were talking to her, and she says, you'd be a great realtor. And that was the switch for me. That was back in 1996.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, it's like next day, I signed up for the classes, and I said, I'm going to be a realtor. So
that's really cool. I mean, you just had the epiphany. You went with it, and here you are.
Absolutely. And I didn't turn back. It was one of those things like, I just knew it was supposed to be, and it was a great fit for me, and I've never looked back one day.
Wow! And what about Karen? Has she always been a part of your team, or did she come along later?
She has always been in the background up until just the last couple of years. She was not licensed, but she worked as I built the real estate business. We had a burgeoning team back out in Phoenix, Arizona, where I started, and she would always work in the office. She would just kind of oversee the other people that we had working for us. At one point, we had 53 agents that worked for us.
Wow.
So she was pretty busy in the background, and it was kind of funny at the time because if you know Karen, you know how everybody loves Karen, and that's just one of those things. Everybody loves her. But back in those days, when she would drive up to the office, I would always see everybody scurrying around. Says, "Oh, like Karen is here. we gotta,
We got to act busy.
We did. We got to get busy, because she would come in and ask those tough questions about, hey, where are we at on this or that, and
how many people have you talked to?
Exactly.
How many people are you prospecting
she was the
with?
one that always kept people on the ball.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
So Karen, more props for you.
Oh,
so
yeah, she
this
gets
is all
a lot.
good. But obviously you work as a team, and that's
Yes.
part of what makes your team effective, because you
It
balance
really is.
each other out.
We absolutely balance each other. We just bring a total different perspective to each and every client. And as we talk about things during the day, that's the one thing that's funny about us, is that we never really shut down when it comes to talking about real estate. We really enjoy it. And
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot.
My dad was the custom home builder. I grew up swinging a hammer and helping, slep out this concrete out of this room for me, and it just grew up around it, and it really, I think it kind of brought me into my industry, because housing and all that just always very interesting to me. So
It is.
So tell me what's something that you like most about real estate, if you were to kind of share some of your thoughts there.
Some of the things that we absolutely love about real estate is the personal interaction that we have with people. Karen and I are both people, and we love getting to know them. We love getting to know their life stories. And that's the thing that really kind of wakes us up each morning and gets us out of bed and allows us to just go, you know what? These are people that really need us for this little season of their life. Some of them remain lifelong friends that we meet. Some of them are just there for the moment, but we still hold each one special in their own way.
You get to know people pretty intimately.
You do.
But it ends up being for what I call a short window.
It
right?
is.
It might be a 90-day window, maybe 120. Your window is a little bit larger than the mortgage window, because they start typically with you, and then they come to us.
Yeah.
When they finally have that house, they need that money, right? But yeah, I mean, I think on my side, it's one of those situations where I personally know that everyone is coming from a different spot, and if you're trying to deliver great service, offer kindness to people, offer them counsel, it's different for each person. It's a different challenge, and you're having to bring people along in different areas of the process. But it's fun to help them with that reward in the end, which is helping them get that home of their dreams.
And we're seeing even more nowadays that sometimes that process, we have a relationship maybe a little bit longer, because the market is shifting.
It's harder
so
to get
much.
them in the homes.
Very
It's
difficult
hard
to get in.
to get them
There's
to
a lot
home.
more coaching, a lot more teeing things up, making sure they've got the right lender is critical to us. And so we see that as the absolute necessary first step. And so a lot of times people come to us and they go, hey, what should we do to get ready? And I said, have you talked to your lender yet? Oh, I should do that now? I said, absolutely.
Absolutely. Very good. So let's take a minute to introduce Susan Dewar. Susan and I have been working together for quite a while now. We've been good friends for many, many years. Obviously, Susan took the leap of faith and joined NFM Lending with me when we left our previous company. But Susan, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got started in the mortgage business?
I got started in the mortgage business actually as a recruiter.
Not typical.
No, not typical. Yes, I recruited and developed branches for a national company on a national scale, and just kind of fell into it. And fell into it at the time where being in the mortgage business wasn't very popular because the big meltdown had happened.
Right.
And I feel that it was the best time for me to jump into the market.
Yep.
So
it's in a way it was, because if you could find success when it was tough, we all knew that we were going to come out on the other side okay.
Yep, that's exactly right. Exactly right. So I've been a licensed loan officer since 2006, and I started originating on a full-time basis at the end of 2010. So almost 8 years originating.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, almost 10 years originating, and over about 20 years of experience involved in the mortgage industry.
And what do you say you would like most? What you like most about being a mortgage consultant?
Kind of the same as Lloyd. I like the interaction with people. I love all of the people that I get to meet, the people I get to help, the people I get to work through what's going to be best for them, and make sure that they do get what's best for them versus what's best for me.
Right.
You know, which was the problem back during the meltdown, is a lot of people were doing what was best for the company and themselves versus what was best for the consumer. So that's my favorite thing about it, is just I've made a lot of friends in the business. So
You have, absolutely. So we've got just a few minutes before our very first break here. So Lloyd, why don't you just give us briefly maybe your perspective on the housing market in the greater Charlotte area? I know you do a lot of work up the lake. You do Charlotte work as well.
Yeah, we cover the whole Charlotte metro area, and what I find interesting about that is that it's amazing from just neighborhood to neighborhood, from even one county to the next, how different the market is. Some of these areas are really, really experiencing high rates of growth and high rates of property value, where the property value is going up extremely well. And then some other areas are actually declining a little bit this year. Really took a little time this past week to look over the 2017 market report that the Charlotte Metro Realtor Association put out. And it is pretty amazing how it is different from one locale to the next. So just within the sound of this program, you can have totally different markets. And
You're right.
all of them require some
The expertise of a realtor, really.
Yeah, some serious looking into what it is. So when you hear a report that, hey, the Charlotte metro market's awesome, well, that may be true in a couple areas, but there may be a couple areas where that's not true.
Right. Interesting. So really, it may depend, right? And there are going to be more popular areas in the metro market than there are others, and that's where you really should enlist the help of somebody like Lloyd if you're looking to buy a home or even sell your home. Somebody like Lloyd is an expert that's going to tell you, hey, is your house that you're selling in that market? What's a competitive price, et cetera, versus not? Or even if you're looking for a buyer, I know you work with buyers, you can help steer them as to the areas that are going to meet their needs. So
exactly.
I know we've got to take a quick break here before we really roll into our theme, but we're really going to be talking about, as we come back after the break, is how to sell your home to the best buyer. And Lloyd's got some really creative strategies that I haven't necessarily heard from a lot of realtors that I want to make sure our listeners, that if you're thinking about selling your home, that it's really a good time for you to take some good notes on Lloyd. Maybe listen to our show again in the future on reshairradio.com, because there's some really wise counsel, and I think it takes a unique approach to really how to help the seller to choose the best buyer, right?
That's exactly right.
So again, we're here in the studio this morning with Lloyd Odell with Odell Realty Group and Susan Dewar with NFM Lending, and we'll be right back with Reshair Radio, so please stay tuned.
Hi, this is Chris Reshair, host of Reshair Radio and loan officer with NFM Lending. Is home buying in your future? Buying a home is one of the most significant financial decisions you will make in your life. Each step in the process is important to ensure a smooth transaction. But the most important step, even before you look at houses or call a realtor, is to get pre-approved. A pre-approval is when a lender evaluates a loan applicant's eligibility for a home loan. The loan officer collects information such as their employment, income, assets, and current expenses. The lender then gives the applicant an idea as to whether or not they could afford a home loan or an approximate amount of loan they could qualify for. If you're looking for platinum level service and open communication through the loan process, call me, Chris Reshaar, at 704-277-4463. That is 704-277-4463. LO license number 117266, corporate license number 2893. Go to nfmlending.com for licensing information, or you can apply online today at themortgagegenius.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshaar, licensed loan officer with NFM Lending. Just for compliance purposes, I am a licensed loan officer. My license number is 117266, and NFM Lending is an equal housing lender. We're back here in the studio with Lloyd Odell with Odell Realty Group and Susan Dewar on NFM Lending team with me. And we're here really just talking a little bit about some strategies today that you came up with, Lloyd, on really how to sell to the best buyer. So if you are listening, you have a house that you want to sell, and it literally can be sell in the next year, okay? Because there's never too early to plan and prepare to sell a home.
That's correct.
It's important for you to listen to our show and consider talking with Lloyd. Again, I bring in experts, 20 plus years here, Lloyd. We bring in experts so that you've got some good counsel. But Lloyd, we want to kind of go through, really, let's get about 6 key elements that somebody that wants to sell their home here that's listening to our show, or that may listen back to the show on your website or on a podcast. The first important step is to have what you have a comparative market analysis performed. So what is a comparative market analysis? What does that look like today?
Well, in today's market, and this is something that's been pretty standard over the years, that when somebody's getting ready to sell their home, it's very common for a real estate professional to come in and do a comparative market analysis. And really what that entails is looking at the market for that particular seller. It could be a neighborhood. It could be just a basic region where they live. But we need to know, or the seller needs to know, and the real estate professional needs to know, what's the most likely selling price for that home based upon comparable sales.
Okay, is there anything special that you do to prepare that analysis?
What we really do is we do look at the multiple listing service to get most of our data from that. We try to avoid looking at little estimate calculators that we find online, because sometimes we find those aren't real accurate.
You're not talking about a Zestimate, are you?
No, I wouldn't be. No, just
anyway.
I'm going to recluse myself from that. But that's what we really look at.
Using real data.
We're looking at real
and
hard
you're reading the notes as to upgrades in each home.
Exactly.
In fact, you've probably sold some of the homes in some of the communities. You have a good pulse on it.
We really need to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So I know that sometimes that's a real temptation for a seller to just kind of go online and look for themselves, and they compare their houses typically pretty favorably to other comparable
more
sales.
Favorably, but
most of the time it's more favorable than they probably should. But what we want to do is have a very realistic view of what their house will sell for if they do certain things.
Got it. All right, cool. So that's really one key element. Let's go to the next one. You had mentioned that part of your process, obviously you can do the comparative market analysis and provide comps and help them get an idea of where the price range is. But you said a needs analysis is really critical to making sure the home is ready to sell.
I think this one is where a real estate professional's experience really comes into play.
Okay.
When we go into a needs analysis, what we do with our potential seller is to look at their life, look at the timing, look at what needs to happen. How quick do you need to sell? Do you have pets? How many children? We just kind of take a look at the whole picture, ask lots of questions. What do they really want? What is it that they really need out of this selling? I mean, do they need to make a relocation across the country? Does that need to happen in 30 days, or is that 60 days, 90 days, 6 months?
Moving is an overwhelming thing.
It is.
I mean, if anybody thinks back to the last time they moved, they think, I don't want to think about that again, right?
That's right.
Very stressful.
It's just never fun.
Yeah.
Now, there's exciting things about buying a new house, and change can be cool, but I agree. I mean, where you're moving to, the timing, all those things go into kind of that needs analysis.
Exactly.
So, all right. So the next component that you mentioned would be important for us to talk about is really getting the house ready. So we're talking really about how to sell to the best buyer. Getting the house ready to sell is an important component of that.
It is. And
so what would you start with then?
You know what? We make no assumptions when Karen and I go into a listing appointment. We actually are going in with a very open mind as to whether that house needs anything or not.
Okay.
Sometimes we walk in and people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that the house is a mess," and they're the most meticulous people in the world. And it's funny how that works, but I'm amazed at how many people will apologize for the condition of their home, and then we walk in and go, "Oh my gosh, it's perfect."
Put the sign in the yard.
Yeah, that's all we need to do. And sometimes it's really hard to convince those people that really they don't need to do anything. Let's just do a final cleanup. Let's maybe wash some windows. and let's get the sign in the yard and let's get this thing sold. Sometimes we walk in and it does need a lot of work. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we just need to find out, again, from the needs analysis, are they willing or even able to put any more money into the house to get a higher dollar value? Or are they just, they just need to sell it as is? So we will price it accordingly to what the seller is able to do and what they're able to perform. As far as maybe it needs some paint, but they're not able to do the paint, we'll price it accordingly. Maybe it needs flooring, but they're not able to do the flooring, or maybe they are. We will give them options. Say, hey, if you were to be able to spend $5,000 to fix it up, maybe do a little painting, maybe a little flooring repair, you're going to get another 10
back on the sale.
Exactly. So are you willing to do that? I know it's going to be a little bit inconvenient, but are you willing to? So we'll give them those options as well. And that's where my construction background really comes in handy, where I'm able to kind of bring them some of those hard numbers, hard costs. Say, hey, we've got those people that can do these things if you're willing to do them. If you're willing to be a little bit inconvenienced, you can get a lot more money for your home.
Well, isn't that part of adding value back to your listing client?
Yeah.
So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Reshair Radio. My number, if you have any questions about the services that we provide, that Lloyd provides, you can give me a call. You can text me and say, I need Lloyd to help me get my home ready to sell. The number to reach out to me via phone or text is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. So, Lloyd, just to kind of break down, let's assume that the house isn't meticulous and you don't have that rare customer. What I understand from having done past shows and work with good agents like you, that really you're going to recommend a deep clean, maybe a declutter, cleaning out closets, thinning out cabinets in the kitchen, kind of really thinning things out. Right. And maybe even staging. You have any thoughts, anything additional shots you want us there in terms of getting the ready?
Getting it clean is probably the biggest thing. It needs to be clean. It needs to smell good. There's nothing worse than walking into a home and getting inundated or just met with an obnoxious smell or an odor. So we really try to work hard at getting rid of those. We want it to be clean and neat. We want the buyer to walk into your home and picture themselves there. That's the hardest thing that we see with sellers, is getting them to flip that switch from being a homeowner to a home seller. And if we can help coach them to that point, it's going to make the process just a whole lot easier.
Great. Well, let's go to the next one. The next one that you say that sellers need to consider is really doing professional photography, or maybe even aerial shots.
Yeah, we think that's just absolutely critical nowadays, and it's totally expected. Anybody that goes online, and it's approaching 90%, if it's not over 90% now, that a home search starts online.
It's just like dating now.
Exactly. So when somebody goes online, starts looking at properties, they judge it real quick by the
quality of the
photography.
Yeah.
So we really recommend, and most good agents do nowadays, take really good professional photography, because that's the first step in getting somebody to come into that house. They're going to see it online first. They're going to look at the pictures, and they're going to make a pretty quick judgment whether they want to see it or not. And a lot of times we see photography that's less than becoming. The iPhone pictures now just aren't going to cut the mustard. Right. Just the little amateur photography just isn't going to hack it to sell your home.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go to the next one. You say price it right. And here's where we can maybe start introducing some of the concepts that I thought were so unique about what you do differently maybe than some other agents.
Mm-hmm. Pricing it right is everything nowadays. And I think that the true real estate professional is going to be real honest with the potential seller. And Karen and I are almost honest to a fault. Sometimes my wife will get on to me and she'll just say, hey, Lloyd, you're just being too honest about the pricing. They're not ready to hear that yet. I said, well, listen, we've got to price it right. Otherwise, it's going to labor on the market. And days on the market right now, especially in the Charlotte metro area, are critical. It's almost becoming commonplace right now that if we're helping a buyer and we're looking at days on the market and we see anything over 3 weeks on the market, we're already automatically assuming there's something wrong with that house. Because our market really is that strong.
Right.
So we really encourage our sellers, let's get this price right out of the chute. And let's find the right buyer for you, because we need that buyer that's ready, willing, and able to purchase your home. And so the price.
So you will walk them through that process.
Absolutely. We're going to walk them through that process and give them all the different scenarios that they can expect when we get an offer. This is what we're expecting, what we want to see. And we want that competitive situation to arise right at the very beginning. We're not going to get those competitive offers 3 weeks into the listing.
Right.
We're going to get them at the very
at the beginning. You're right. And then one other component that you had mentioned was you also may consider like a coming soon sign in the community, just to kind of maybe stir up some energy around the sale.
Absolutely. There are certain circumstances, and it's a case-by-case, on a case-by-case basis that we recommend that. We don't do anything from our perspective, Karen or I, from a listing and selling perspective, that is cookie cutter. Every situation is different. So a coming soon sign may work really well for your house, but not so great for another property in another neighborhood. So really it's case by case. The coming soon, what's great about that is it really gives other agents that are in the CMLS, the multiple listing service, gives them a heads up. Hey, we got a property coming on the market, and here's the date that we're anticipating it's going to come. So if you've got a buyer ready for that, get ready, because on this date we're going to list it. Get in here and let's take a look. And it also gives your neighbors, because you put a sign out in the front yard, gives your neighbors a heads up.
That's
hey,
right.
This house is getting ready to go. So if you know somebody that's ready to purchase.
Sometimes the neighbors want to have a family member or friend live close by.
And we're finding more and more that neighbors are getting involved in who they want to be in their neighborhood, who they want to live next door to them.
So we're going to take a quick break. Again, you're listening to Chris Reshatar with Reshair Radio. We're here in the studio with Lloyd Odell and Susan Dewar. We've got more to talk about here on how to sell to the best buyer in a busy real estate market. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, Chris Reshatar here with NFM Lending and host of Reshair Radio. If you are considering purchasing a home, you may wonder what your financing options are. We offer a variety of loan products to fit your situation, including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, and jumbo loans. Here in the Carolinas, some of the most common loans are FHA and USDA. FHA loans are popular in low-income and first-time buyers due to their less stringent requirements. They also have low down payment requirements and tend to have a lower credit score requirement as well. USDA loans also allow low and moderate income households to purchase homes in an eligible rural area. Home buyers who do not qualify for a conventional loan may be able to purchase a home with USDA. If you're looking for platinum level service and open communication throughout the process, call me, Chris Reshatar, at 704-277-4463. That is 704-277-4463. LO NMLS license number 117266. Corporate NMLS license number 2893. Go to nfmlending.com for licensing information, and you can apply online at themortgagegenius.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with NFM Lending. And we are here in the studio with Lloyd Odell with Odell Realty Group and Susan Dewar with NFM Lending, loan officer. And the two of you obviously have been working together for a number of years. We've been talking really about our show theme on how to sell to the best buyer. If you're thinking about selling your home, this is a great show for you to listen to and even call in on if you need some help with getting your home sold here in the near future or over the next year. So, Lloyd, we were kind of talking about all these different components, pretty traditional components of what you need to do to get your house ready to sell. But you had mentioned also that maybe some of the ways that you market the property may be unique or individualized to the property that you're going to sell. So what are some of the things that you and Karen do to maybe market a property?
You know what? That's a great question, Chris. We have seen over the years in our experience, listing agents and sellers make a couple of, we think, critical mistakes or things that don't really serve them as well as they could when they go to list their home. And the number one thing that we're seeing in this market right now is the competitive offers, the multiple offers. And
and we do see that. So you've got a house for sale and you've got maybe 6 bidders.
Exactly.
So go ahead.
Yeah, well, sometimes from a seller's perspective, your initial thoughts of that are, oh, that's great. We've got 6 offers. But the question really comes into play, well, now that we've got 6 offers, what do we do with them? One of the things I was reading this past week, and it just really popped into my mind, it's like, okay, you have just created a situation because you've got a great house in a great area, great neighborhood, or whatever it is. You've just created a bidding war.
A frenzy, perhaps.
Yeah. And so when you create a bidding war, well, war initially just kind of brings to mind, oh my gosh, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's
going to lose.
Somebody's going to lose. So the question really kind of comes in to play is, okay, so what do we do now that we've created this little war? And I think that's where the experience really comes in handy. Karen and I have kind of developed a process for sellers as we discuss with them what their needs are of what's best for them. We need to know what's best for our seller. So when we have a bidding war, we have multiple offers, we don't always serve our seller the best to say, hey, we're going to do highest and best. We've got a little different philosophy on that. We may do a highest and best, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. As a general rule, we don't do that, and we communicate that real clearly in the MLS to other agents that, hey, this property will not be sold that way. If you meet our sellers' highest
basically their expectations.
Yeah, their expectations.
The price, the timeline.
Exactly. Their price, timeline, due diligence fee, which is really important in this market. If you meet those high points for our seller, we're going to present your offer immediately. We're not going to sit on it for 2, 3, 4 days and call for highest and best. Sometimes when a highest and best situation arises, the buyer almost feels like, oh my gosh, they feel like they're going to lose from the get-go. And we know that from experience because we work with a lot of buyers.
Am I overpaying?
Yeah.
Will it appraise?
Exactly.
Everybody's pushing that price limit up.
So if we set the price realistically and we say, hey guys, we're going to market this home. We're not going to call for highest and best. What we're looking for is a great offer. And you meet our seller's expectations, we're going to present it immediately. And if it's a great offer and it has the pre-approval letter with it, and we'll be talking about that later with Susan, if it has all those components that we're looking for, then we're going to sign that thing and we're going to get done.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you know what? We create a win-win. The buyer feels good about what they just got. Seller feels good about what they got. Everybody goes into the transaction feeling pretty good. And so goodwill has been established, and we want that goodwill to remain throughout the contract period because, there's going to be something that comes up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you had mentioned as we sort of prepared for the show that there's even stats that are close to maybe 20% of multiple bid situations that actually fall out where
Absolutely. We have seen such an increase in the fallout of offers where a property will go under contract and all of a sudden you see it back on the market. That's never a good thing. Not for that buyer, not for that seller, especially if I'm representing the seller. It's just really not a good thing for the seller.
Because if I'm a buyer and then I feel like I bid up $10,000 or $20,000 above the price, the minute anything else goes a little awry, it's like, nope, I'm not buying this house.
Exactly.
I'm already overpaying for it.
Yep.
But if you present, like you had said, you set specific criteria that the seller has or their expectations and say, this is what we consider a good offer, and that first buyer or second buyer presents an offer that matches those criteria, you don't need 7 other offers. Because your seller
really
gets what they want. The buyer says, yeah, I'm agreed. I'm not having to fight against all these other people. Right. I think we'll be willing to pay that. Mm-hmm. and then everyone seems to be a little more committed to that process.
Absolutely. That's where we've seen the success of the ratio of our successful sales go up on our listings, is that we set that expectation with the seller, we set it with the buyer and the buyer's agent. We both go into it knowing what we're willing to do, and nobody's coerced. And so it really lays the groundwork for a really successful transaction.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, what a great perspective. I appreciate you sharing that. It's, again, a little bit of a different approach, but I do like it because it seems like it's a little more holistic. Mm-hmm. It's a little about more or less creating a win-win situation for the real estate transaction. And if that can have increased chances of closing and everybody being happy, isn't really that what your job is as a realtor?
That is absolutely my job. My job with my listings and my sellers is to get to the closing table.
Right. So great. Very, very great perspective, Lloyd. I appreciate you sharing that. So we're going to hop over Susan. Susan's a licensed loan officer with NFM. We work together, and Susan and I really just wanted to take a couple of minutes while we have some time. And number one, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes here before our segment is up. Number one, Susan, why don't you tell people about the pre-approval process and why that's important in the buying process?
Well, of course, it's very important in the buying process because when a seller is looking at an offer coming in, they're going to want to make sure that the buyer is going to be able to close on that transaction. We see a lot in the marketplace that buyers end up not being able to close. They come in with a pre-qual letter. A pre-qualification, there's a big difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval.
Lloyd, do you even really pay attention to pre-qualification letters? I mean, do you accept them, or are you looking for the approvals instead?
I want the approval. If I'm representing my seller well, I'm looking at that pre-approval letter, preferably over a pre-qual letter. And if two offers come in and they're both equal, we're going with the pre-approval.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Definitely.
So what's different about that, Susan, for our listener?
Well, for the pre-approval is when people actually, the buyer and the borrower, they come to us. Not only do they put an application and give us information, they provide us all their documentation.
Okay.
At NFM, we go even a step further. You know, that documentation, everything goes into underwriting. It's fully underwritten. And then not only does it just stop there, it goes to processing and all the third-party verifications are done. Everything's done. The only thing that needs to happen from that standpoint is that borrower to go find a house. And we then have to just underwrite the collateral along with that transaction.
Yeah, the property.
Yes. And NFM took it even a step further to assure the buyers that they are good to go by adding in what's called their loan assurance. And what loan assurance is that if for some reason that transaction does not close and they get final approval within 20 days of that actual loan application once the house is purchased, NFM Lending is going to put $10,000 on the line to that buyer, assuring them that their loan's going to close. Not only assuring the buyer that the loan's going to close, they're assuring the seller that the loan's going to close also.
Right. So in a competitive marketplace, Lloyd, that $10,000 buyer assurance can add strength to an offer, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. We just see that as being a real win for the seller, win for the buyer, and it just really does. I mean, the market that we're in with all the things falling out of contract, we need assurances. That just adds a total new dimension to the game, and we love that.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I know we only have a minute or two left, Susan. So why don't you just share with how does a buyer get in contact with you if you and Lloyd want to work together and help buyers and sellers? How would they get a hold of you in case they want to get qualified and get this $10,000 loan assurance?
They can reach me via cell, phone, or text at 704-224-6003. Or we have a very convenient online application that they can reach me there at www.thedewarteam.com and get their application.
That's DEWAR.
Yes, that's DEWAR. So like the Scotch.
All right, so. That's right. And then Lloyd, obviously you shared a lot of great information today. How would one of my listeners on Reshair Radio here contact you directly?
The best way to reach me, honestly, just go to my website, just www.odellrealty.com, and it's Odell Realty, REALTY.com.
Awesome. So it's been a great show. I will also kind of put my information out there as the host of Reshair Radio. If you need to contact me for any reason you have questions, my job is to support you, our listener, with your financial needs, real estate needs, mortgage needs, whatever it might be. And I will connect you with local resources like what we have here in the studio. So my number is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. You can text me, give me a call. As always, you can listen to past shows in their entirety at reshairradio.com. That's RESH, reshairradio.com. And for your mortgage needs, my nickname is The Mortgage Genius. And so my website is themortgagegenius.com. So great show, everybody. Hopefully we'll have you back again in the future. I'm sure we'll have Susan back in here again as well. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back again next week on ESPN The Game 730. Thank you for listening to Reshair Radio, and we hope you all have a great week. Thanks again.
Thanks, Chris.
Did you know it has been reported that an estimated 80% of Americans have credit inaccuracies on their credit reports? Most people that have either inaccuracies or existing items that can be negotiated or adjusted do not know what their best score could be until they have found a new home, or buying a new car, or applying for a credit card. Then it's too late, and they have to accept a higher interest rate or lose the opportunity altogether. The time to work on improving your credit score is before you need it. Whether you have a 440, 640, or even a 740 FICO score, there is always room for improvement. The National Credit Care Team is comprised of individuals dedicated to helping the millions of consumers plagued by credit inaccuracies, errors, and fraud. It is our mission to help inform consumers and alleviate the stress of working with creditors and credit bureaus. Together, we can maximize your scores to get the best interest rates possible and save you money. Call now, 303-747-6390. That's 303-747-6390. Or visit us at www.nationalcreditcare.com.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to Reshair Radio again. We're just back from a quick commercial break. We're going to shift gears a little bit here and introduce our expert contributor, Adam Kunda with National Credit Care. Adam, welcome back to Reshair Radio.
Chris, good morning.
It's great to have you here. And I know you flew in from Colorado for our show this weekend, and just glad to have you here again. We are actually going to spend some time today talking a little bit about understanding the different types of credit and then how that impacts your credit score. And this is really kind of very basic information, yet at the same time, the information we're going to share is so important to you understanding how credit works and how it can really make an impact on your credit score. So Adam, before we sort of jump into our overall theme here, as a contributor to Reshair Radio, you've been bringing really great topics and helping our listeners understand credit. But tell them a little bit about what you do over at National Credit Care so they can get a feel for how they might be able to tap into what you're offering.
Understand, we are a credit restoration firm built specifically for the mortgage industry. My expertise and my specialty and knowledge base is on mortgage credit scoring and how that goes together and how we can help you better establish that, and also look at some of the negative things that are on the report so we might be able to get the score up as well there. So we are a full-service credit restoration firm to try and get you into a home loan with Chris.
There you go.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep.
There is nothing greater than when if I'm at a stuck point with a client, to be able to pass them off to your team and then have you volley them back in 6 months or 9 months. Mm-hmm. And I've had several customers this last year that we did exactly that. And it's fun to know that I took somebody who wasn't quite ready, and with your team's help, of course, because it's a team effort, to be able to jockey somebody back into a position where they can buy a home. That's what it's all about for me as a loan officer in our market. Sure. I have plenty of opportunities to help people with home buying. I'm not in a position where I need another loan to be able to pay my bills. I've been very blessed with a lot of business. But what's really cool is being able to take customers that you've been able to help and convert them, because it's more about the joy of the process and helping them accomplish that. So anyway, let's jump in, Adam. Really just wanted to really do a reminder show and understanding the 3 different types of credit and maybe how that can impact their credit. So I'm really going to probably let you take the wheel here and explain what those types are, what those buckets are, however you want to describe it, and maybe we can break down the importance of them. And because I see people that maybe don't understand, they might not have any buckets filled. They might only have all of their buckets, all of their eggs in one basket, if you will, right? And so forth. So you take it from here, man.
All right, thanks, Chris. So conversations with my friends always on credit, they talk about either their score is frozen, it's not moving any higher, or that
why is it stuck? Yep.
They're doing all that they can to get their negative stuff taken off to get that score up. So let's just go over there's 5 components that make up our credit score, and the largest section that we have is about negative credit. That is obviously 35% of the score, and we're looking at negative things such as late payments, bankruptcies, tax liens, judgments. Guys, anything that you think is hurting your score, this is where it is placed in this pie chart. Up to 35% of the score is negative information. So the kind of, I guess the takeaway here is that 65% of our credit score has nothing to do with negative credit. And that's where all my friends are falling short. There's the kind of game when you're a child, you've got that square peg, you're trying to fit it in the square hole. It's not going to fit in the circle one. So that's what I've been doing for 7 years, understanding the dimensions of that peg, the dimensions of the hole, and trying to make sure that we are sizing this up for each specific client from wherever they're at and wherever they're trying to go, so that we can start to maximize this other 65% of the credit score as well. Very important to watching your score go up if you're adding positive credit and adding on-time payments. So when we look at positive credit, the biggest thing that is important to you to understand is revolving accounts, which are your credit cards, your store cards, your gas cards. If you do not have any of these on your report, you're missing about 30% of your credit score, which makes it very difficult to try and get some funding.
But wait, my dad told me don't never get any credit cards, and I pay cash for everything, Adam.
Is your dad named Dave Ramsey?
No, I wish. I probably would be doing the radio show with Dave, not on my own here in Charlotte.
No,
but anyway,
for sure.
I'm not syndicated yet.
I understand. So let's just go over the difference. Obviously, Dave Ramsey is a very smart guy on how to manage budgets, keep your kind of lifestyle under that umbrella. But I'm here to say that in credit cards are so important to the credit score that if you use them how I say to use them, then you're not necessarily breaking Dave's laws as well. So I will tell you to go get a credit card and use it as lightly as possible. I'm always looking for my borrowers and consumers to be using about 1% to 2% of the limit on the card. Typically
That's very small.
Very, very small. So typically we were usually starting out with, let's just say, a $500 card. We're looking to charge $5 to $10 on the card every month. Keep in mind, I didn't say 50 to 100. I didn't say 500. We just need to keep it really low in terms of utilization percentage, because that's where we get the most points. If we're at 1% to 2%, we are getting the maximum amount of credit scoring points in this 30% pie slice. So we might as well be using our credit cards at least once a month to help generate some on-time payments as well. If we go back to the section where negative credit is found, our payment history, 35%, that's where we have negative payments, but we can only overcome those with positive payments.
That's right. Time.
So if you do have credit cards, make sure you're using them. I see a lot of clients that come to me that might have 4 or 5 credit cards on their report, and they're just using one of them every month. So they're getting one on-time payment and credit for just one. Where if they used all 4 or 5 for 1% to 2% and put an on-time payment on there, they're starting to build a lot more positive payments in this example. And we can watch their score start to move up, and it's not staying at that 688 for 3 straight years. So revolving accounts are probably the most important part of the positive credit. So we're always going to be making sure they're on the report.
In terms of our pie for types of credit, the first type and most important type is the credit or revolving.
Sure. This is just a specific section on revolving credit only, though. So 30% is, do you have a credit card?
Sure.
Or do you not have a credit card? So if you do not have one, you're missing 30% of the score. It makes it pretty hard to approach funding.
So what makes up the next percentage of that pie?
The next section, we get a little bit smaller in weight here, about half of what we just talked about. 15% of our score is about length of history, and we're looking at how long have we had accounts open on the report. So obviously, if you're a little bit older, you have a little bit more advantage here than somebody that's younger, but they are averaging the length of history. That's what makes it very difficult. If you have a card that's 20 years old and a car loan that you just got this month, you only have a 10-year length of history. And to maximize this 15% of the score, they would want your average length of history to be 25 years or more.
Cool.
I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody that's had 25 years. There's a gentleman in Colombia, I'll never forget, had 18 and a half. That's the highest I've ever seen in this section. So why is your score not going up? Well, maybe you don't have revolving accounts, or maybe you're keeping your length of history very, very low. Christmas shopping. January is kind of the best time to go look and see what kind of revolving accounts you did open. And maybe you don't need these on the report. If you close these down, they're going to not be factored in that length of history anymore, and we can watch the score go up. So it's a little, just important to not always be opening new credit. If you do have a card from 1981, don't close it. Keep it open. That's, obviously
right.
holding
Especially
up the credit score.
Good payment behavior on it.
Sure. And you might have just heard, I did say close a newer card. That is okay. There is a myth out there that closing credit is going to hurt your credit score, but it's about which account. You close that 21-year-old credit card, yeah, your score is going to go down. That's going to lower the average length of history on the score. Versus if you just close that card that you got in December, that might make the average go up, and you actually might see the credit score go up for doing those types of actions. So length of history is 15% of the score where they're looking at an average.
Got it.
Cool.
What's next, man?
We'll move along, moving fast. We have types of credit. 10% of your score is about the different types of credit that you have on your report. And I would say that this is the biggest hindrance when we talk about why your score is not going any higher. This is almost like a ceiling here. If you don't have the available types of credit that they're looking for on the report, they kind of max out your credit score. If you just revolving accounts, you can get a 700, probably a 710, but that's about as high as you can get. Gives you a great rate if you wanted to go get an auto loan or a mortgage. And then those different types of credit are going to keep pushing this ceiling up. If you want an 850, you have to have 3 revolving accounts, a mortgage, an auto loan, some sort of other installment than an auto loan. Student loans are typically common. And you have to have all these on the reports if you're trying to get the maximum credit score, roughly 850.
Which is really what I was trying to hit on earlier, and that is you've got revolving as one of the main types. You've got the installment debt and then mortgage. And oftentimes I'll see 2 different types of buyers that come to me, and one of them is somebody that maybe just got out of college and all they have is student loans,
Correct.
but they don't have any credit cards. Right. Or I'll see the inverse, right? We'll have somebody that's got a bunch of credit cards but no installment. And really it's about balancing and having a combination. Obviously they're trying to get their first house, so we'll get them the mortgage down the road, right? That's the third type that we're trying to get them to achieve, but you've really got to have a good balance of both. And I'll see people who have great student loan payment history and no revolving debt, and then they say, well, why is my score only a 620 or 640 or 660? And I'll say, well, you really need to have some of the revolving credit in the mix. And without that revolving credit history, you're never really going to achieve those higher score levels. But my dad said, don't ever get a credit card, right? And I said, well, you might have to maybe not listen to your dad's 20-year-old advice and listen to our counsel if you want to temporarily get your scores up. Let's get you some revolving history. And if you want to cut them up after we get your scores up and never use a credit card after you have a mortgage, great. But that balance is really important.
I totally agree. And just to round it out, the last 10% of our credit score, they kind of reserve this section for just applying for new credit. They have a buffering system where if any new piece of credit has been added to your report, they're actually going to take away credit scoring points because now you're a current risk. You haven't met your obligations yet, and they want to see, are you going to do that? So the takeaway here, if you are trying to buy a car or a home in the next 6 to 12 months, we're not going and opening up any new trade lines because that's going to diminish the score that you're going to see when you actually do go apply for that home loan or the car loan. So
right. There's just no history of performance on that new account, so it drops the score down.
Yep. So if you have 6 months typically of on-time payments on that new account, you will get the points back. But if you don't have 6 months of on-time payments, if you have 5 months and 1 late, you don't get the points back, and that prevents you from going and applying for new credit and kind of buffers that system for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we've got just a minute or so here to wrap up the show for the week. So, Adam, as always, thank you for coming on to Reshair Radio. Could you quickly give your information so they can contact you should they need your services and need a free evaluation from
yes,
your
sir.
team?
And Chris, thanks as always for having me on a beautiful Sunday morning here. You can reach me on my cell phone if that's easiest for you, 720-556-1959. That'll get to my cell phone. You can text that, call me. If email works best for you, adam@nationalcreditcare.com. I've got typically about a 30-minute response time, so try me out. If you have questions, are confused, anything at all, this is my job. I'm here to help Charlotteans make sure that they know what is a credit score and how we can make that better. So thank you so much for listening today.
Awesome. And the goal of this show of Reshair Radio is to excite, empower, and educate Charlotteans to make sound financial decisions. So that's what we're doing here with expert contributors like Adam. So as always, if you need any mortgage services, you need to get qualified to purchase, or you want to refinance for any purposes, my number is 704-277-4999. 4463. That's 704-277-4463. You can listen to our show in its entirety at reshairradio.com. That's RESHAIR radio.com. And for mortgage services, you can reach me at themortgagegenius.com to do an application. That's 3 words, themortgagegenius.com. Adam, thanks again for being on the show. We're going to sign out for another week. We'll be back next Sunday on ESPN 730, 10 o'clock. Hi, this is Chris Reshatar, host of Reshair Radio and loan officer with NFM Lending. Is home buying in your future? Buying a home is one of the most significant financial decisions you will make in your life. Each step in the process is important to ensure a smooth transaction. But the most important step, even before you look at houses or call a realtor, is to get pre-approved. A pre-approval is when a lender evaluates a loan applicant's eligibility for a home loan. The loan officer collects information such as their employment, income, assets, and current expenses. The lender then gives the applicant an idea as to whether or not they could afford a home loan or an approximate amount of loan they could qualify for. If you're looking for platinum level service and open communication through the loan process, call me, Chris Reshatar, at 704-277-4463. That is 704-277-4463.